My name's Steve Cross. I work at Corpus Studios in Melbourne. Yeah, I've been tattooing 13 years and set up the studio with Brian a couple of years ago. I used to travel Australia selling flash basically in the early and mid 90s and was a muralist on the western side of Australia. I don't think they're bad tattoos. I think the tattoos, I used to say they're like music. They record a moment, they capture everything, who you are, who you're hanging out with, the way you're speaking, what you're wearing, your attitude, whether you like that anymore or not. And that's why people with tattoos that everyone else thinks are horrible and bad, you still speak to that person. There's an element of pride with what they've worn on their forearm, even if it's shocking visually, aesthetically. It's what it stands for, and it's a period, and it's like listening to a particular song and going, oh, I remember. And hanging out with a lot of graffiti writers, so there was a lot of past, and a lot of guys were starting to get tattooed. And that's where the sort of interest started, but I realised that in winter you can't paint murals, so basically I started drawing a lot more and trying to find out how to do commissioned work and stuff like that. And in those days it wasn't, graphic designing really wasn't a job, it was a cut and paste type of job. So I got to learn some really good old trades in that sort of thing of design and illustration, painting murals, and then during the winter I'd come to Melbourne and sell flash. So I'd get a job for a couple of months, fly over, and then walk to every single studio in Victoria, and would just sleep on people's floors and stuff like that, and then go back home, draw more, come back. And I actually didn't sell that much over like 5 years or something. But I met every single tattooist in Victoria and WA, and yeah, and anyone who was travelling. So I sort of got into the industry quite slowly, and the sort of the baby steps, which is the way I've always liked to do everything, slow and easy. And I was just about to move over, and there was nowhere to work over here. I went back home and just randomly went into a studio just before, a week before I flew out, and got an apprenticeship. And we started working there. So WA is pretty interesting because it's a navy town. So in the middle of midwinter, you'll get 6,000 men, or 4,000 men, 2,000 women, and they're crazy. They want to get tattooed and everything else. So I learnt everything very fast in a studio, and my boss at the time would take off and would leave me running a studio. So and it was pretty heavy times over there. There was a few problems with a few sort of clubs and stuff. So it was a pretty high tense sort of situation. But I really enjoyed it actually. It was really good, and I learnt everything that I still use now. I paid my dues, and I did 2 years in Perth and then 8 years in a eastern suburban studio in Melbourne. And that's where I really learnt the business side of the trade. And the owner there really sort of helped me, or gave me access to everything so I could work it. So I was kind of running a studio, really, without the repercussions of anything. And it was fine. We successfully ran it really well, me and Brian. So. And that sort of just set the foundation for us having the confidence to leave, and it being being the right time for both of us. And then we set this place up. So it was never intentional that I was going to own a studio. It was just the way it happened. So yeah, I've sort of just travelled. I usually pick a city a year. If I've heard it 3 times, I'll just usually go and buy a ticket to that place if I know nothing about it. And then usually a couple of weeks later I'm there going, what am I doing here? See what conventions are going on in those cities, and then I travel. But I've travelled all through Italy for a couple of months. Did the whole country, gone through France a lot. Went to Spain last year, but basically just sort of was in Barcelona most of the time. But hooked up a bit of work there, which I'm going to go back and work there again pretty soon, in the next 2 months. Yeah, and just did New York and the Milan convention and stuff like that. I feel like I've gathered the momentum of using everything that I've done in my past, and it sort of helps. So I go to national galleries all the time. I'm not really focused on tattooing all the time, as in looking at that to be inspired to tattoo, and it's a lot of the time it's architecture or sculptural, or it's jewellery. It's anything that I see I've really focused on structure in the last couple of years with my tattooing and compositions, and I've sort of noticed that a lot more with everything, plant life to jewellery to skyscrapers, that basically the foundation is really important. I'm working from home at the moment doing illustration, so I've sort of dropped a few days here at the moment, and this month's been spent painting at home. So I sort of need to keep those interests in other aspects of art constantly, and I find that I apply everything to everything. So if I am doing graffiti, I apply that to a tattoo, and a tattoo to watercolour, and watercolour to photography, and to just drawing and sketching generally. And I draw a lot every day, and some weeks I'll draw demon heads, and then another week I'll just be studying how pigeons walk and what would be their muscle structure and why would their head move forward, and little things like that, the way people's posture. And so I'll go through also on this other study that has nothing to do with tattooing, and then a couple of months later I'll apply that. Might have to tattoo an old person with a trolley, and I'll think, oh yeah, that's why their spine's like that. Thanks BME for supporting the tattoo industry and everything that you actually have done. I think it's important that these interviews are happening in Australia, and you can reach us at corpus.com. Is it .au? .au. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, cool.